Hello, hello. Ugh, this feels weird. Hi, happy 2026. It's your girl, Jamie. Hey, I'm here alone today, so I feel very awkward suddenly. Happy New Year. This is the first episode that's dropping, and I'm using a new microphone. I hope it's okay. I put a sock over it. Shout out to Phoenix for telling me to do that, but if it sounds bad, never mind. Anyway, I hope everyone's having a good start of their new year. I'm doing good. Life's good. Burger's good. I started learning chess. I got a chessboard for Christmas, and it's really hard. So that's been taking up quite a bit of my time. I've not won a single game. And I've been playing some Fortnite. Go Fortnite. And I've just been kind of hating the cold weather. And that's all that's new with me.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Jaim, and this is Creeps and Coffee,
a show where we talk about the dark parts of the world around us.
Cryptids, conspiracies, things that go bump in the night,
and the crimes behind the scariest creatures of all, humans.
Join us as we take a look at the stories sure to give you the creeps.
Pull up a seat, grab a coffee,
and let's have a chat.
Now, you're probably, if you read the title of this, you're probably thinking, huh? What? Why are we talking about this on a true crime podcast? This is stupid. I hear you. Shut up. So, I've actually been wanting to talk about this for a while. GMOs, genetically modified organisms. And I want to talk about the conspiracies around them because there is a lot of hate on GMOs. And I am actually here with no one to argue with me, which is kind of on purpose. Nobody was available to record, so I was like, you know what, screw it, I'll do it myself. I'll argue both points. I wanted to come on here essentially just debunking conspiracies about GMOs. So I will explain what GMOs are, how they work, and then I'll just go over a lot of the common fears with GMOs and how I can rationalize them. I'll go over the conspiracies with them and then disproving the conspiracies, that sort of thing. And let's just get into it. So, what the heck? What are GMOs? GMOs, as I mentioned before, stand for genetically modified organisms. They are part of genetic engineering, which in the past 100 years has really spiked. But we've always sort of had this, even in nature, a genetic modification system. But I'll get into that. I digress. So a GMO, which you'll hear me say that a lot, a genetically modified organism is any organism whose genetic material has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. The exact definition of what constitutes genetic engineering varies, while most commonly it's just that the organism was altered in a way that, quote unquote, does not occur naturally by mating and or natural recombination. So a wide variety of organisms have been genetically modified throughout the years. So animals, plants, microorganisms, that sort of thing. We've had genetically modified mammals, fish, insects, bacteria, viruses, and a lot of plants. So corn, maize, rice, potatoes, soybeans, that sort of thing. And it's not as scary as it sounds. I pinky promise. There is a lot of unknown about it, which is, I think, what perpetuates this fear, first and foremost, is if you just went to the supermarket right now and started asking people about GMOs, what are your thoughts on it? Do you know what it is? Do you know how it works? Are you scared of it? People are going to be scared because they don't know what it is. And that's totally fair. That is valid, and I hear you, and I support you. Therapy talk comes in. Your thoughts, feelings are valid. However, you don't have to be scared. The unknown scares people, and so when they don't know much about it, or if they just know surface level, you're genetically modifying things. Yeah, it's scary. It's just a tool. It's just a tool in our toolbox in this day and age where it helps us with food. It helps us with animals and crops and that sort of thing. You also have what they say, GMCs, genetically modified crops. Those are very common nowadays, and that's not a bad thing. The pros outweigh the cons when it comes to GMOs. I can let you know that. Okay, let me rephrase. In my personal opinion, the pros outweigh the cons for GMOs, but people are creeped out by it. People hear about big corporations like Monsanto, I don't know how to say that without an accent, but they are nervous about it because they're distrusting the big corps, the big governments, which I'm all for that. I also love to question, big pharma. What are we doing? What are we hiding? Are you trying to keep us sick? I think that can be healthy to be a little bit questioning of the bigger companies. However, you don't need to be creeped out by this. This is not something that, honestly, I shouldn't be talking about this on this podcast. Our topics range from true crime, paranormal, cryptids, unsolved cases, mysteries, natural phenomena that we can't explain. Maybe unnatural is the word I'm looking for. Unnatural phenomena. And we also talk about conspiracies. This barely fits the conspiracy section because it's not a conspiracy, but people act like it is. This is very much the Florida water is making the frogs gay. This is what this is, but on a bigger scale with people who believe it more. The fluoride is not making you gay. the GMOs are making the frogs gay. The most common genetically modified organisms are genetically modified cotton and canola, two of which are so popular in this world, and we cannot live without them. And Monsanto, is that how you say it? Monsanto. I definitely said it wrong earlier. Anyway, Monsanto, I think it was bought by something else now. It might be under a different name. But Monsanto is the big one, the one that we fear. We as a whole, we as a general population fear this one. It was used to make Agent Orange, which, if you didn't know, was a chemical used in the Vietnam War. And it was really damaging, and it was a potent herbicide that was linked to severe health issues of veterans and the Vietnamese civilians due to its toxicity. And so they settled a lot of lawsuits and stuff, but Vietnam still continues to request more compensation, and so it was a big deal. And so people use that in their argument. Okay, well, Monsanto created Agent Orange. They helped do this awful thing, which is also valid, and a healthy amount of distrust is good. But they're not doing that right now. They are doing other things, none of which we have proof is bad, none of which we can actively find, weapons. We can't find anything dangerous so far. And if it comes, in 20 years, we find out, GMOs are bad. They are dangerous. Jaime was wrong. Jaime on Creeps and Coffee podcast was wrong. By all means, I apologize. However, currently, this is what I'm feeling. I know. I just don't think, I think it's a good thing, and I'll explain why. But we just can't let fear hold us back from evolution. And I'm here to educate. From my international development degree, I'm here to educate. So, GMOs are used a lot with seeds, GMO seeds. Farmers use those a lot to help kill unwanted insects, for example, from harming the crops. It helps improve their yield, and in the long run, that's good. We, according to the studies, have not found it causing any health problems, which is one of the big arguments, is people think it's going to cause physical harm to people. We don't have any solid proof of that. And that's science right there. Science is ever evolving, and we have to just go with the flow. We are always learning new things, and we have to learn and adapt our mindsets as science grows. For example, we thought the earth was flat many, many years ago. We were so convinced the earth was flat that that was just the general consensus. All of the brightest minds, most of the brightest minds in the world said, yes, earth is flat. We know this. Give it 100 years and we went, wait a minute. Wait, the earth is round. The earth is a ball. We're a ball in space. And that is now our best hypothesis on what's happening. We evolved and adapted our general consensus, and that is widely accepted. I think we need to do that with GMOs as well. You know, we thought they were scary. Here's why they're not. We go from here. And I think that's how we should be with a lot of things, you know? DNA editing is coming. It's here, and it's just going to get more popular as we, you know, as the next 200 years happen. Gene editing as well, you know? I know there's a lot of controversy about designer babies and stuff, but I'm not going to get into that today because that's another topic, and I do think I should have someone to debate that with or argue with. Honestly, same with, I know people are scared about cloning, but it's happening. People are cloning. We are cloning animals. You know, if you pay an exorbitant amount of money, you can clone, you know, your dead cat. You can clone a horse, I believe, and it's very expensive, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Something crazy, but if you want an exact genetic clone of your best racehorse, you can do that. I digress. Anyway, the unknown scares people. That's all I'm trying to say, is that it's scary. And, you know, as we evolve in science, here's why I don't think you should be scared. Did you know that sweet potatoes are genetically modified? They are GMO foods from nature. Does that change your opinion at all? Sweet potatoes. When I think of a sweet potato, and I'm sure what you were probably just thinking, is if I said, are sweet potatoes healthy? You would have went, yeah, sweet potatoes are great for you. They are so good for you, and that is still true. They are great for your immune system, and apparently they're good for your vision, like carrots. They've got great vitamin A, beta carotene. They've got a lot of fiber. They've got a lot of antioxidants that help with blood pressure. They've got vitamins B6, potassium. They're great for weight loss. They're so good for you. They're great for gut health. They aid in digestion, and it's great for your cholesterol. They're genetically modified. Franken potato, you know? Don't be scared of Frankenstein. We should have learned our lesson by now. Don't be afraid of Franken potato. Franken foods are not the enemy. And there is a lot of conspiracy theories that claim... It's a lot about the agriculture business, as they call it, the agribusinesses, that people believe that they have suppressed data showing that GMOs can cause harm, and they're flooding the system with other information so that you have to really dig to find proof of this, and that they are deliberately causing food shortages to promote the use of genetically modified foods, or that they have co-opted government agencies such as the United States Food and Drug Administration, or other scientific societies like the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and that it's like, it's bad. We'll talk about it, okay? Okay? So, a lot of critics charge the GMO conspiracy theories that are largely, this article says promulgated. If Caitlin was here, she'd know how to say that correctly, by those opposing the production and sale of GMOs. There are a lot of instances of I'm gonna kill myself. Unsubstantiated conspiracy theories that have occurred lately in the context of public health issues. I don't know why I said that like it was a question. That's the end of my statement. Bananas are also technically a product of genetic modification. The bananas you buy in the grocery stores, also you'd assume very healthy. They are. They are not what they used to be. They have been heavily modified throughout centuries of selective breeding. So they used to be, wild bananas had large, hard seeds in them, and they were sterile, meaning they can't reproduce from the seed. And with selective breeding, humans chose to pick the plants with the desirable traits, so, sweeter flesh, without seeds, that sort of thing, over generations. This is a form of genetic modification. So there are a lot of skeptics who, you've got scientists, journalists, and conspiracy theorists relating to GMOs, and there is very much a GMO activism and an anti-GMO activism. So it's very much a big back and forth between people. So a 2013 paper published in the journal PLOS One, found statistical evidence that linked conspiracy theorist ideation as being a significant factor in the rejection of scientific propositions about genetically engineered food. One GMO conspiracy theory was identified by biochemist Paul Christo and a horticulturist, Harry Klee, as that's a character in Genshin Impact. Klee, okay. As a claim that development and promotion of GMOs was done by pesticide companies to cause crops to become more vulnerable to pests and therefore require more pesticides. Makes sense? And with this, a philosopher, Juha Raika, excuse my pronunciation, identified a conspiracy theory that claims the lack of any reliable scientific evidence that shows harmful effects of GMOs is due not to a lack of evidence, but rather to a conspiracy to hide that evidence. I am a little bit torn here because, correct, there is a lack of reliable scientific evidence that shows the harmful effects of GMO. There is a lack of evidence that they are flooding the, internet with information saying GMOs are good, and that's why we believe GMOs are good. I would like to argue with that, but I do know that they've done that before. I do know that the big they have done it before. That is how the whole, breakfast foods debacle started. The meat industry wasn't super popular. It wasn't bussing out. They decided to put out that whole ad campaign many, many years ago of, what do you need to have a nutritious breakfast? You need eggs, you need bacon, and you need toast with butter. That is a nutritious breakfast. Eggs and bacon. What's a great dinner? What's a man's meal? A sandwich. You need some ham on there. You need a turkey sandwich. You need a steak. You need a T-bone steak. And they flooded, the world with this propaganda, I guess the word is, that you need meat to have a fulfilling meal. You need meat to have protein. You need meat to have a healthy breakfast. When that's not exactly true. And we know this. That's proven that, they did this. So I can't. Hey, I hear you. However, my homeboy Bill Nye, I trust him more than I trust the government. Bill Nye says GMOs are good. Bill Nye says we need GMOs, and I believe him because he has never, not once, lied to me. That man is always honest. Love you, Bill Nye. Bill Nye, do you want to be on an episode of the podcast? We would love to have you. So if Bill Nye says we need GMOs, we need GMO crops, we need genetically modified foods, I believe him. He's telling the truth. Go check out, I think it's called Bill Nye Saves the World. He's got a TV show. They often use something, the most common genetically modified food is from petunias. Scary. Flowers. The petunia flower. That's not scary. It's a flower, right? And a lot of the foods are genetically modified with a part of petunias called glyphosate. Don't ask me how to spell it. I won't spell it right. Glyphosate is used for its weed killing properties. So it will, if they genetically modify, say, I can't think of a food anymore, corn with it, It would kill weeds in the corn crops, but not the crops themselves, which is good. There is a concern. Like everything, there is pros and cons, and like everything, there is good and bad. One concern that I do think is fair is that weeds are becoming resistant to glyphosate because we've been using them pretty heavily for years now as like a weed killer. The weeds, just like us, are evolving and becoming resistant to glyphosate. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't know. I'm assuming that means we will just have to pivot and use a different property similar to glyphosate, but not glyphosate, to also kill weeds in the future. But, it's the same vein as like, I think it's called superbacteria, where yes, if you use hand sanitizer, it kills 99% of the germs. It kills 99% of the bacteria on your hands. What about that 1%? Not only is it not dead, but it becomes resistant. That's a whole other topic, though, that I won't get into. But that is also scary because you could have antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which would essentially become an unstoppable force, and then it kills us, and then we all die, and then the world ends, But that leads me into another panic people have, is that we don't know the consequences. It's so scary. We don't know what's going to happen. Sure, we're not finding any proof of any health dangers right now, but we don't know, maybe in 30 years it will go, oops, yep, this was actually so toxic, you're going to die, which has happened again in the past, but we can't do anything about it. We can't change it. That's just life. People, the story about the radium girls, where it would be like, oh yes, we are working in a factory. Yep, I'm going to lick the tip of this spoon to like finish my product. That sounds crazy. I'm actually just going to look it up because that sounded insane. But the radium girls were young women who were working in the factories in the 1920s who painted glowing watch dials with radium-infused paint. At the time, we thought radium-infused paint was fine. It's like this bright green color. However, as the years have gone on, we've learned that radium was actually a radioactive material that was not good for them at all, and they should not have been doing that. So they would I believe like lick a brush or something for like a finer detail, whatever it was. It led to severe radiation poisoning, jaw decay called radium jaw, bone cancer, and even death. And, this sort of highlights the consequences of negligence and, checking for safety before production even begins. So, yes, that is a possibility. But there ain't nothing we can do about that. We won't know until it's too late. And I don't think we should live with that fear. But I do know it comes from a deep down sense of fear of death, which is human and natural, and I have it too. We don't want to die. And we don't want to be responsible for harming our loved ones or killing our loved ones either, If you're a mom and you hear GMOs are so bad for you, only buy organic, non-GMO, non-herbicide, non-pesticide kale, because if you get the regular kale from the dollar store, you're going to make your child sick and they're going to grow a third eye and then they're going to die. You don't want to do that. You want to be a good mom. You'll buy the organic, non-GMO kale if it's what the world says is healthy. If it's what social media is telling you to do, you'll probably listen to it because you're like, oh, well, I want my kid to be okay. I want them to thrive. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to be unhealthy. And that is fair. However, are GMOs dangerous as of right now? GMOs, are we dangerous? I don't know, Jamie. Are they? Tell me about it. Actually, they can be life-saving. What are you talking about, Jamie? That doesn't make any sense. How are they life-saving? We were just talking about how they might kill you. Well, other Jamie, listen here. The first GMO is technically insulin. Yeah. In 1982, insulin, the life-saving drug that we use to help people with diabetes, Insulin is a crucial hormone produced by the pancreas that regulates blood sugar and glucose by helping it enter cells for energy or storage or keeping the levels stable. When the body can't make enough, the blood sugar rises, leads to diabetes, a condition often treated with lab-made insulin with injections or pumps. It can be rapid, short, long-acting. It mimics the function and prevents serious complications, including death. That is a GMO. It's a genetically modified organism. And that's not scary at all. Insulin was a life-changing production. A lot of new drugs are also GMOs. Anything with like organisms and bacteria and antibiotics that we've tested on, you can consider a lot of new drugs GMOs. Can we argue that those are, for the most part, a good thing? I need my Tylenol and Advil. I don't know about y'all. And here's another crazy one that you're probably gonna mind blown. I did not know this. Thank you, Bill Nye. There are genetically modified enzymes in laundry detergent. Yeah, laundry detergent. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, and we just didn't know it. It is in most parts of your life, and it's not a bad thing. And I know some people have made the argument that we don't know the consequences, right? We could turn into zombies. The theory that this stems from, have y'all ever seen The Last of Us? You remember the game, the TV show The Last of Us. I can't remember if it was proven that this was what happened or if it was a theory, but I saw somewhere that they said, oh, well, you know how the zombies were like, oh, well, like, the people in the beginning were like, well, if the temperature rises by this much, the organisms will adapt and then we can't stop them. The only reason that cordyceps are like in check is because the climate is too cold for them to live. As our temperature rises, global warming and climate change are both, they're two different things. They are both happening actively right now and increasing the temperature. There was also a conspiracy or a theory, maybe it's true actually. Yeah, I was right. The outbreak in The Last of Us was a mutated strain of the cordyceps fungus, which is a real parasitic fungus that normally infects insects. It evolved to jump to humans, and the initial spread occurred through contaminated food supplies like flour. So people are sort of relating GMOs to this with like the flour theory. And it's not quite the same thing. Yes, we are messing with the genes, but it's not exactly that. So there have been a lot of conspiracy theories involving GMOs, and their promoters have been invoked in a variety of different examples. One of which was the Seralini affair, which was an incident that involved the retraction of a much criticized paper which claimed harmful effects of GMOs in lab rats. An American biologist, P.Z. Myers, said that anti-GMO activists were claiming the retraction was part of a, and I quote, conspiracy to hide the truth, unquote. A work seeking to explore risk perception over GMOs in Turkey identified a belief among the conservative, political, and religious figures who were opposed to GMOs that GMOs were a, again, and I quote, a conspiracy by Jewish multinational companies and Israel for world domination, unquote, while Latvian studies showed that a segment of the population of that country believed that GMOs were part of a greater conspiracy theory to poison the population of said country. A study of media rhetorical devices used in Hunan, China, found that the news articles that were opposed to trials of golden rice promoted conspiracy theories, including the new view that the West was using genetic engineering to establish global control over agriculture, and that and that I'm gonna kill myself. And that GM products were instruments for genocide. Likewise, a study of the rhetoric used in public policy debates about genetically modified food in Ghana showed that conspiracy theories were a feature of civil society oppositions to GMOs. I would like to talk about golden rice, because I actually think that it's great. If you've never heard of it, feel free to go look it up. It's a very neon yellow, bright, obviously golden rice. And it's a variety of rice produced through genetic engineering to biosynthesize beta carotene, a precursor of vitamin A, which we've already established in sweet potatoes. It's very good for you. And it is put in the edible parts of the rice. It is intended to produce a fortified food to be grown and consumed in areas with a shortage of dietary vitamin A. So it's meant to help places who are struggling with food production. Those places where people are starving to death, children are dying, where we need that extra nutrients to be provided. And I think that's a really good thing. Some people take that as the West trying to take global domination over agriculture, and not the fact that we want to help people not starve to death and die. So the government and scientists were denying the claim that GMOs were discriminatory and that they denied it posed a significant human health risk, as well as the call to action to do something about it. Civil society adapted the counter rhetoric of insincerity, claiming that scientists had some kind of quote unquote hidden agenda behind their claim, such as an eagerness to just earn money for their patents on GMOs, which, sure, a money grab is definitely an option. It's definitely not, I'm not above thinking that about some people. We are in a capitalist society. Everybody loves money. It is imperative that communication on GMOs includes the underlying assumptions, the uncertainties, and the probabilities associated with both best and worst case scenarios. This is a necessary condition to minimize misinformation on GMOs, but may be insufficient to completely erase conspiracy theories from minds of the public, especially when scientists and government are perceived to be biased towards multinational corporations that are preoccupied with making profits, which is also true. Totally valid. There was a social critic, Margaret Stang, who contextualized certain arguments adopted by the GMO conspiracy theorists as part of the larger controversy surrounding the subject. And she stated, the corporate push for genetically modified food arouses great suspicion. Critics charge that GM food coined the term frankenfood. I said that earlier, not knowing it was a real term. I thought I made that up. I was really proud of myself. Is profitable to industry not only because it can be patented, but because crop uniformity will eventually drive up pesticide demand. The charge that big food interests take advantage of poverty to open new markets for genetically modified food is restated by conspiracy theorists who describe deliberate macroeconomic creation of food shortages in impoverished nations in order to open the door to GM food. The food industry's opposition to GM food labeling and precautionary measures fuels such suspicions. Are you following me? Do you understand what I'm even saying? I understand, but I don't know if other people can understand. And since I have no co-host today, I don't know if you're understanding. This view was echoed by a bioethicist, I don't know, Michael Ries, and a moral philosopher, Roger Strauhan, who explain in their book called Improving Nature, the Science and Ethics of Genetic Engineering, that fears about the consolidation of power by a few agrochemical companies over farmers is a main argument against new genetic engineering technology in agriculture. This is a quote. At its extreme, this fear belongs to the conspiracy theory genre and to caricature somewhat, envisages powerless farmers forced to pay ever-increasing amounts to anonymous international companies who profit from the cost of the crop seed and the cost of the herbicides used to spray them. Unquote. There are a lot of smaller companies and smaller farmers, smaller businessmen who do use GMOs, though, and aren't finding any problems with this, who disagree with this, and they don't find it increasing exponentially for the price of herbicides and pesticides. It's increasing the normal amount because we are having inflation in this capitalist world. You know, yes, the herbicides may be more expensive than they were 20 years ago. So is rent. Rent 20 years ago was $300 for, you know, a 2-bedroom apartment. Nowadays, you want a 2-bedroom apartment in Canada, you're looking at $1,800. That's not because of a conspiracy theory that we're poisoning people with black mold in the rent department. It's because of inflation and capitalism and greed. Let me see. Another political science professor, Joseph, I'm not going to say their last names, in their book American Conspiracy Theorists, summarizes this. Another prototypical conspiratorial movement involves those opposed to genetically modified organisms. In essence, is a protest against the genetic engineering of food. Not everyone who opposes GMOs is a conspiracy theorist. Reasonable people can disagree about research and fail to see small groups of people covertly working against the common good. But most visible and vocal members of this movement, however, are indeed conspiracy theorists. They believe that genetically modified foods are a corporate plot led by the giant multinational Monsanto to profit off of unhealthy foods. This was the GMO conspiracy theory was an honorable mention in the 2016 5 most dangerous conspiracy theories. And a lot of scholars have identified ways that the internet has aided proliferation and connection between conspiracy theories, including those about GMOs. There was a lot of related topics. People were looking up GMO, big pharma, and vaccines. I am pro-vaccine as well. I'm sure I will get some unfollows for that as well. And I'll tell you now, Caitlin is also pro-vaccine. I don't care what you think. Vaccines do not cause autism. I don't know if we've even talked about that or not, but that's a whole other topic. But yeah. Okay, so that was a whole bunch of stuff that is definitely a lot of opinions. And some of it I understand, some of it I don't agree with. I would like to talk about some of the hoaxes. So there's lots of conspiracy around GMOs. Here are some of the conspiracies that I can at least debunk. There was a 2015 internet hoax purporting to show that Monsanto was creating genetically modified cannabis. It was completely a hoax. It was that they were putting GMCA, genetically modified cannabis, to supply to the cannabis industry. This was created by a satirical fake news website called the World News Daily Report on April 9th in 2015. Monsanto created a standing denial of the hoax on their Myths About Monsanto webpage and tweeted a disclaimer prior to the 420 holiday in 2016. And on April 20th in 2017, they again tweeted, "Happy 420, time for our yearly reminder, Monsanto has not and is not working on GMO marijuana." Do we still call it tweeting if it's X now? What do we call it? Xing? I'm going to tweet this on X. I'm going to X this on X. I'm going to post this on X. Anyway, there was also some controversy with Chipotle, which I've still never tried, I don't think, but I'd love to. In the context of mid-2010s concerns over food safety at Chipotle Mexican Grill, there was a few people who implied that the outbreaks of foodborne illnesses were sabotage carried out by the biotech industry in retaliation over Chipotle's removal of GMOs from their menu. The claims were identified as unproven, and they were debunked by a couple of different websites. The alpha-gal syndrome, this was quite recent. In 2023, there was a false conspiracy theory connected to a tick-borne alpha-gal syndrome, which is the acquired allergy to red meat. This syndrome was connected to the Gates Foundation tick research, which was said to spread on social media. However, there was no proof of this, and I believe that it was exposed to be fake as well. And it was a discredited claim. There was also the 2016 concern over the Zika virus. There was a Zika virus outbreak, which, if you don't know it, it was, I believe it started in Brazil in 2015 2016, and the World Health Organization, the WHO, declared the end of the epidemic in November of 2016. But it still represents, it's still around, it still exists. And there were claims on Reddit that the virus was being spread by a genetically modified mosquito. The fears were based in part because of a new mosquito initiative led by Oxitec, I believe that's how you pronounce it, which is a British biotechnology company that develops genetically modified insects in order to improve public health and food security through insect control. The insects can act as biological insecticides, and the company claims that the technology is more effective and more environmentally friendly than the insecticides. Sure, we can go on to the debate about creating bioweapons, but we, the general public, don't know enough about that to have proof of anything and to go into anything like that. Anyway, they released a genetically modified mosquito, Oxitec did. They were male mosquitoes who do not bite, and they are genetically modified to be sterile, and they are released to mate with females, resulting in no offspring, thereby reducing the, I don't know the Latin term here, Aedes aegypti mosquito population that spreads tropical diseases such as the Zika virus. These claims were identified as unproven by the debunking website Snopes.com, formerly known as the Urban Legends Reference Page. It is a fact-checking website, and it is known to be very accurate. Anyway, yeah, they disproved that one as well. Discredited it. There is also some ethical criticism in Scholars and Rogues, an online progressive political journal. David Lambert, a development program officer for the United Nations, compared the conspiracy theories supported by some in the anti-GMO movements to those supported in the anti-vaccination movement. Ain't that what I just said? We're going to read this whole thing just because I feel like I was right. As they say, like preventable childhood diseases, malnutrition is another great moral failing of our time. GMOs, such as golden rice modified to contain high levels of beta-carotene in order to compensate for the vitamin A deficiency, which kills hundreds of thousands of children around the world, blinds many more every year, and drought-resistant crops, which will become increasingly vital in the global south due to climate change, has vast potential to help those who don't shop at Whole Foods, but real progress has been stemmed by the paranoid and misinformed who claim that GMOs, which are biologically no different than natural foods, are somehow poisonous. Behind it all is, of course, an evil corporation, Monsanto. I also want to say these fears of, our foods at Whole Foods, they better not have GMOs. They're poison, they're evil, they're bad for you, is inherently a privileged take, and we have to acknowledge that it's a privilege to be so picky about your food. You choose where you're getting it, where it's coming from, who made it, how it's made, and what products are used on it. That is already in itself a privilege, because there are people who are starving right now who would eat the dirt off the ground if it means putting something in their stomach. Not where they do not care if it is genetically modified or not. They just need to eat because they are severely underweight. They are starving to death. They're dying. The children in Gaza, they just need food. GMO food or non-GMO food. We need to feed people. And that brings me to a whole other topic, which I won't get into, is the fact that there are people starving in this world, literally starving to death and dying, and then there are some places in the world where we are eating so much that the majority of the population is obese. But we won't get into that. Another freelance writer and speaker from the skeptical movement wrote for Forbes, being Caven Sympathy. I'm so sorry, I definitely said your name wrong. Both the anti-vaccine and anti-GMO movements cherry-picked, discredited, and retracted scientific studies, such as the 1998 study by Andrew Wakefield linking the MMR vaccine with autism, and the 2012 rat study linking genetically engineered crops with cancer, while ignoring the vast bodies of evidence against them. And both lead to injustice. It may seem that surely the anti-GMO movement is benign, albeit wrong, inconscientious? I don't know that word, compared to anti-vaccine atrocities. It may appear that it all boils down to some harmless non-GMO labels on grocery store items, but it turns out there is a human cost. And yes, they did disprove the vaccine link to autism. They disproved that claim. Let me say it once more for the people in the back. They disproved it. The same movement that drives marketers to source non-GMO ingredients also influences regulatory bodies around the world. Crops are kept from regions in Africa where drought is a major contributor to the complex causes of malnutrition, with researchers in Tanzania forced to burn test fields of drought-tolerant corn rather than feed starving local children. Disease-resistant crops languish due to ideological regulations, while bananas resistant to Xanthomonas wilt, which is threatening food security in Uganda and Eastern Africa, where it's a staple crop, kept from farmers and people who desperately need them. Philosopher Giovanni Tagliabue argued that promoters of GMO conspiracy theories were being taken advantage of by anti-environmental corporate interests and fails to hit their supposed target. This is what he says. This ideological and political anti-corporate worldview, although sometimes almost paranoid, is legitimate. Yet while I do not argue whether this attitude is good or bad, right or wrong, I maintain the avowed anti-industrial struggle in the field of green biotechnologies not only fails to hit the supposed target, but benefits and supports a part of the industry's products have a stronger environmental impact than rDNA cultivators. In addition, and more importantly, opposing GMOs generates heavy collateral damage to public science, agriculture progress, and the poor. Well said, good sir. Well said. So, I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm not done. I wanted to go over maybe the arguments and counter-arguments for and against GMOs. Argument against GMOs. The health risks. We are concerned about potential allergens, toxins, and long-term effects on human health, including the development of antibiotic-resistant diseases if antibiotic resistance in the GMOs transfer to gut bacteria. Proof. Counter-argument. The World Health Organization and other major scientific bodies state that GMO foods on international market have passed safety regulations and are not likely to present risks of human DNA, or not likely to prevent risks of human health. DNA from food, whether genetically modified or not, generally breaks down during digestion, making gene transfer highly unlikely. Well, what about corporate control and ethics? The large corporations hold patents on GM seeds, raising concerns about monopolization of the food supply, exploiting of small farmers, and prioritizing profit over public welfare. This distrust of biotech companies often fuels general skepticism and distrust. Proponents argue, on my side, that technology, if developed and regulated responsibly, has the potential to address global changes like malnutrition and improve crop resilience to drought and pests, benefiting farmers and food security worldwide. What about the environmental factors? This is just sort of a breakdown. What are the unintended consequences of GM crops on biodiversity, such as cross-pollination or outcrossing of GM genes into wild plants, creating superweeds, and harm to non-target organisms like butterflies or beneficial insects? The effects of the environment depend on the specific crop and local conditions. We can argue many suggest that GM crops have no negative environmental impact, that conventional ones, no more than conventional ones do when proper management strategies like buffer zones, for example, are used effectively. Herbicide-resistant crops can also encourage low-till farming, potentially reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is a good thing when we talk about global warming. The inadequate testing and regulations argument against GMOs, critics argue that current safety testing methods are insufficient in duration and scope and often funded by the biotech companies themselves, leading to potential biases in research findings. The other side says that there is rigorous and strict guidelines and regulations like the FDA, WHO, EPA, all of which have been watching for safety assessment of GM products. Each new GM product is evaluated on a case-by-case basis before approval for commercial use and release to the general public. The final one, it's unnatural. We're playing God. We should not be doing this by moving genes between unrelated species in a way that wouldn't happen in nature. The other side says it's a whole spectrum. All domesticated plants and animals, all of them have been genetically modified over millennia through selective breeding. Modern genetic engineering is considered a more precise version of this, allowing specific genes changes in a single step rather than random and lengthy process of traditional breeding over like millions of years, hundreds of years, thousands of years. Cavemen were doing it. Which apple are we going to eat? Are we going to eat the tiny, scrawny one with a bunch of seeds that tastes really bad? Or are we going to be eating the nice, juicy one? The big, bright red one that's got a nice, crisp layer of skin on it? Which one are we going to plant? Not the nasty one. Anyway, that's it. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm ranting now. And I feel like I don't have anything else useful to say. Yeah, let me know what you think. I think people on Facebook and YouTube are going to eat me alive for this, but that's okay. I accept the consequences of my actions just as I accept the consequences of my genetically modified sweet potatoes. Thank you for listening, and I love you, and please be nice. It's a new year. Follow us on Instagram, Creeps and Coffee. Follow us on X, Creeps and Coffee. On TikTok, we are Creeps and Coffee as well. You can send us a message at our Gmail, which is creepsandcoffee@gmail.com. Or if you want to subscribe to our Patreon, where you get an exclusive episode every single month, courtesy of moi. Hi, Mom and Dad. You can go check us out at patreon.com/creepsandcoffee. All right. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Sorry I spoke so fast. My throat is dry now. I need to go get a coffee. I'm going to go get a nice coffee or a chai tea. And, yeah. Okay, bye.
Creeps and Coffee is produced and edited by us, Kate and Jaim.
Our theme music is Stuck in a Hole by Dated.
For more information on where to find them, check out the link in our show notes. And to connect with us, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at